Episode 3 of Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 2 takes a darker, more emotional turn that many fans have been waiting for and dreading. It's the moment when the series stops simply being a continuation of young Sheldon and becomes its own heartfelt exploration of grief, family, and the weight of moving forward. The death of George Cooper Sr. was one of the most heartbreaking moments in young Sheldon, and while that show focused largely on how Sheldon processed the loss, Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage finally shows us how the rest of the Cooper family has truly been living with the aftermath. From the very first scenes of Episode 3, it's clear that George's absence is still a shadow hanging over everyone. Georgie, now a husband and father, carries the burden of trying to fill shoes that no one ever could. He's not just mourning his dad, he's wrestling with what that loss means for the kind of man he wants to become. In young Sheldon, George Sr. was often misunderstood, but Georgie and Mandy's first marriage gives him a kind of posthumous justice. Through Georgie's memories and conversations, we see how deeply his father's lessons shaped him, even if he didn't realize it at the time. Mandy, on the other hand, faces the emotional fallout in a different way. She didn't know George Sr. as deeply as the rest of the Coopers, but she's married into a family still navigating grief that hasn't fully healed. Episode 3 shows how that unspoken pain seeps into her relationship with Georgie. There's tension between wanting to move forward and feeling guilty for doing so. Mandy tries to be supportive, but grief is complicated. It shows up in arguments, in silence, in moments of distance. And this episode captures that beautifully, showing how loss doesn't just haunt the person who experienced it directly, it touches everyone close to them. One of the most powerful parts of Episode 3 is Mary's storyline. In young Sheldon, Mary Cooper's faith helped her cope with George's death, but here, we see how that faith sometimes serves as a shield for pain she still hasn't faced. She visits Georgie and Mandy, trying to be her usual self, but it's clear she's struggling more than she lets on. Her interactions with Georgie are particularly heavy. There's a sense that she's trying to hold on to what's left of her husband through her children, but it also puts pressure on Georgie to be something he's not ready to be. This episode doesn't shy away from the messy truth of grief. It's not about closure, it's about how people live with open wounds. Georgie, who often uses humor and confidence as defense mechanisms, has a few raw moments that strip all that away. We see him alone, reflecting, remembering his dad in the quiet moments. Those scenes hit hard because they remind us that even though Georgie is an adult now, part of him is still that kid who just wanted to make his father proud. The writing in this episode is subtle but powerful. It doesn't over-explain the grief. It lets the emotions breathe. Little moments, like Georgie staring at an old photo or Mary mentioning something George used to say, carry enormous weight. These details make the story feel grounded and painfully real. They also help highlight the generational shift in the family. George Sr. represented a certain kind of strength and quiet integrity, and now that he's gone, Georgie is trying to define what those traits mean for him as a husband and father in a completely different world. Another standout aspect is how the show balances this heavy subject matter with moments of light. Mandy and Georgie's daughter provide small bursts of hope throughout the episode. Her innocence and laughter remind both characters and the audience that life goes on, even in the face of loss. It's a delicate balance that Georgie and Mandy's first marriage pulls off surprisingly well. It doesn't cheapen the grief, but it also doesn't let the show drown in it. Episode 3 also gives fans something deeper to think about in terms of legacy. George Sr. was a flawed man, but he loved his family, and his influence still echoes through every scene. Georgie's choices, whether in his work, his marriage, or how he parents his daughter, are all colored by that memory. It's a reminder that even after someone dies, their presence never really disappears. It lingers in habits, in words, and in the values we pass on. By the end of the episode, Georgie and Mandy share one of their most honest conversations yet. They talk about what it means to move forward without forgetting, to build a future without erasing the past. It's emotional but not melodramatic. It feels real. The scene captures the essence of what Georgie and Mandy's first marriage is trying to be, Not just a sitcom spinoff, but a story about young adults growing up through hardship, trying to do better, and learning that love sometimes means holding space for pain. In many ways, Episode 3 serves as a quiet tribute to George Sr. and a turning point for Georgie. It shows that grief doesn't end when the funeral does. It lingers in the way people live, love, and try to find their footing again. For fans who watched young Sheldon and felt George's death didn't get enough follow-up, this episode finally delivers that emotional closure, not through grand gestures, but through the small, human moments that define real loss. Ultimately, Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 2, Episode 3 reminds us that the pain of losing someone doesn't fade, it evolves. It becomes a part of who we are, shaping the choices we make and the relationships we build. For Georgie, this episode marks the beginning of a new kind of maturity, one grounded not in rebellion or pride, but in understanding what it really means to carry on a family legacy. It's heartfelt, honest, and deeply moving, a true reflection of how the show continues to grow beyond its origins, finding new emotional depth with every episode. For more videos, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel.